1st, China will relax its immigration measures, including the applications process for permanent residence and long-term visas, to provide more convenience for high-level foreign skilled workers. But what are the main changes? How will the new policy attract more foreigners to participate in China's economic development? And what are the benefits for foreigners working in China? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Professor Mark Levine at the Minzu University of China and Ravish Bhatia, a Yancheng Scholar 2017 at Peking University. We will also speak via satellite to Wang Huiyao, President of the Center for China and Globalization, who's now in Singapore, and Professor Martin Loquet, Dean of the Faculty of Business at Nottingham University Business School of China, who is currently in Hong Kong. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to Dialogue, gentlemen. What do you think of the policy?
I think it's a good policy. I can explain that, to me, it's not really a surprise. In 2014, I won the National Friendship Award. And part of the process of receiving the award is it's given the day before the National Day holiday. And then the recipients for that year attend the banquet at the Great Hall of the People. Prior to the banquet, the Prime Minister, the Premier, makes a speech and has a photo session with all of the recipients. And in 2014, Li Keqiang got up there and he said, there are 6,000 foreigners working in China.
Today?
600,000.
600. Today there are 1 million.
Yeah, well, he then said, there should be 6 million. And then he said, there could be 60 million. He said, and I want to make it easier. I want to make it easier for people to come, for people to work, for people to live, bring their families and contribute. And the first thing he announced was that they were going to be changing the regulations to make Friendship Award recipients one category of eligibility. I was the first one to actually get the green card based on that being a category.
Congratulations on the green card.
Thank you very much.
I believe more preferential policies are being rolled out by the central government here in Beijing to attract more skilled foreigners. What do you think of the prospects?
Well, I didn't get a Friendship Award, but I do have a lot of friends. So it makes me feel positive that a lot of these policies, the 1,000 Talents program, the Zhongwen Sun government has its own program. And if you read through a lot of these policy documents like the State Council's Next Generation AI Development Plan, all these are these little snippets of wanting to attract highly skilled talent.
Right.
And I think it's important for China as an economy as it moves from this manufacturing to more knowledge-based, innovation-based economy. Because what allows it to do is that not just look at it from, oh, we just need workforce, but we also need, in addition to the workforce, add on to that level.
Right.
We're not just talking about technology transfer, we're also talking about knowledge transfer, which is going to be key. So broadly, I think, just from a policy perspective, these are very smart moves that as some other countries begin to close up, is going to be, and there are many studies that have been done, it's going to be very helpful for China, definitely.
Today we are very happy to be joined here by Henry Wang Huiyao, President of the Center for China Globalization. He is indeed an expert of immigration studies. He's joining us from Singapore. Hi, Henry. Now, do you think China is ready, given the sizable population of 1.4, and each year we have millions of university graduates? The job market, I'm afraid, doesn't have enough space for more immigration. But please question my question.
Well, I don't think that's have any conflict at all. For example, now China has 35 million college students on campus, and then Chinese international student with degree studies is 200,000 something. So it's a very, very small number, not even 1%. But as you know, those international students or international talent, which is also, if it's counting about 1 million working in China, against 1.4 billion is also 0.5%, which is also the lowest in the world. So I think that is really, China now has embraced the globalization. China now are taking on a Belt and Road Initiative. China wants to, Chinese companies going global. We are really ill-equipped, not well equipped with international talent, and then there's not enough talent going around. So, you know, for example, U.S. has a trend about 300 president of ministers of different countries. UK has a trend about 170s, 80s. Like Singapore, I'm now in. Both Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew and Li Hsieh are trending UK. But for China, you know, there's only one or two, you know, Prime Minister or minister, you know, trending China. So there's a long way to go for China. And also, as Bill Gates actually used to testify at the Congress every year, that each you know, H-1 visa, which means working visa, that Microsoft brought to United States, it can create 4 jobs in the United States. So I don't think there's any conflict. Actually, on the contrary, it can actually help Chinese companies going global, enhance productivity, and also particularly have the global business, and so that can create more jobs and create more opportunities. So I think it's high time, actually, it's the right time. Since China established a new ministry level of National Immigration Administration, now they are issuing 12 new measures just last week to really promote and enhance China's global competition for talent, and maybe follow the goods movement, talent movement. Now the talent movement follow the capital movement, actually.
Harry, you know the big issue. Harry, you know the big issue is that China has a very different traditional culture, which means we are not very comfortable with immigrants in their thousands coming to our country. And after we only had 4 decades of opening up, during this process, China is shifting from an expertise exporting country to an expertise importing country. What does that imply, Harry?
Oh, I think China is already the lowest, both for international students and international population, lowest in the world. You know, like for example, international population in China is 0.5%, 10% lower than India, and that's the developing country average is 1.6%. The world average is 3%, and developed countries 10%. So it's far from anything to be worried about. I think it's very, very low. And on the other hand, I think the government and also our policy, I think we should really give a good orientation. We should welcome foreigners and foreign talent come to China, because China now, if we want to establish a joint future of the mankind, you know, like President Xi said that many times, you know, build a joint community destiny of humankind. You really need a lot of people. So even like Beijing, Shanghai, and we're building the global cities or world-class cities. There's, you know, 0.5% of global population. If you don't have the global talent, global population, how can you build a global city? So I think ironically, China also wants to do innovation. Like Zhongguancun is claimed as the Silicon Valley of China. It's also less than 1% talent from overseas, whereas Silicon Valley has 40–50%. So those, I think, harsh reality make China now realize they have to catch up and they have to do something on that.
There's a long way to go before China becomes a real global player. Let me go to our friend Professor Martin Loquette, who's standing by in Hong Kong. Hello. So what do you think of, say, China that has issued 133,000 visas and residence permits to foreign entrepreneurs, investors, and technical and managerial specialists in recent years? Are these are these policies quite enough? I mean, in the context of populist thoughts and sentiments around the world.
Well, I think there are 2 aspects to this. The first is that China's going against the trend of other countries which are tending to try to restrict immigration more. But it's true, as was said before, that if you can attract students to stay in the country, then that's good for the long-term interests of the country. It's also true of the economy. So that's one aspect. I think the other aspect is that if China becomes more attractive for people, then that will also help China become more international, boost understanding of other countries and how to work there, and that will in turn be beneficial to China. So I see it as beneficial both to people who are well qualified and can contribute to China's economy on the one hand, and then a boost to China's economy on the other. And so therefore they're not in line with what's happening in some countries like the UK or US, but I think they're very positive changes.
Well, of course, given the sizable market in China, we have a lot of reasons to attract brilliant and skilled labor force from around the world. However, the issue is whether China is ready and whether China is attractive enough. That means whether the soft power of this country would deliver enough reasons for people around the world. Ravish, do you think a developing country could attract brilliant minds?
Yeah. Before going into that question, just a quick statement. I think we need to differentiate immigration in general with immigration or movement of high-skilled talent. A lot of the backlash in Europe and the US is against immigrants coming in general, and often taking on low-paying jobs, which a large section of the population where backlash is coming from revolt against. A lot of the discussion, China is not taking on a lot of immigrants from, say, like in Europe, taking on immigrants from Syria. We're not taking on immigrants from Burma or other places. We're talking about high-skilled talent, which is good. I myself did a program at Yenching where we had people from 40 different countries, so pretty globalized if you think about it. And what happens is that in an amalgamation of this, the soft power then spreads out. You see each of these 100 people going out in their own countries doing something with China, forming new bonds, creating new ventures, and that is important for a country that's, and I actually disagree that China is closed. My experience was very open to it. So I think it's going to be going out a lot, but we need to differentiate between high-skilled talent and immigration in general.
Now let me go back to Henry Wang Huiyao. You witnessed the evolution of this 1,000 talents plan initiated by the central authorities in Beijing. It seems there are many obstacles that get in the way, and many people are not very optimistic about the deliverables coming out of this plan. What do you think of, say, the competitiveness of a similar policy option that may attract more to come back?
Well, I think China has nothing to really to be apologized or ashamed of a 1,000 talent program. We actually, compared with U.S., it's really peanuts. For example, every year, U.S. has 40,000 outstanding talent in their immigration program. So China, for the last 10 years, only 8,000 talent program. Being people attracted to China, or most of them are Chinese students who have been attracted back. So it's actually a program attracting Chinese students back. Majority of the 1,000 talent come back are actually authentic Chinese. Actually, most of them actually left China in the early days, who China actually cultivate them, train them, and then they did a postgraduate study, they are working overseas, and they come back through 1,000 talent program. This is nothing to be criticized about. There might be a few bad cases about 1,000 talent program, but it's nothing to be really, complain the whole program. The whole program, I think, compared with the U.S. one, it's really so trivial, so small. And then you have many other countries have the similar program. You have Canadian Research Chair, you have Australia have a different program, Israel or Ireland. Every country have its own program, attract talent. German does that too. So I think we should not blame the 1,000 talent program because they have one or two incidents that it didn't go well. But I think, and also should not criticize every country's own initiative to attract talent, particularly its own diasporas to come back. So this is really, I don't think so, because like India, they have overseas Indian citizenship. They have attracted thousands of millions probably Indians back, but nothing to be, there's no mention of that. So I think what China does a little bit of a 1,000 talent program, there's only 8,000 of that in the last 10, 12 years. So nothing to be critical about. So I think that's really not fair to scrutinize this program and attach a political, geopolitical connotation to that. I think it's not right. And after all, American attracted so many Chinese talent working in the U.S. I just had OECD numbers. OECD said that there's 200,000 PhD graduates, either from China or from all those countries, working in the OECD countries. There's 2 million people who have a master's degrees working in all these OECD countries from China. So look at that, compare with a few thousand people China attracted back, with a large number of Chinese talent contributing to OECD countries. It's really not compatible. So I think we should really not criticize just China, but look at the international practice and give China rightful and place to that.
But Americans may have a benefit of doubt to look at their restrictions on student flow from China to the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and internet areas where the Chinese might be accused of undertaking industrial espionage. You look at the extensive media reports about this. That's the American suspicion about the intention of the Chinese government. Having said that, do you think there's going to be a sharp decline in the number of Chinese students doing academic research in those areas, and therefore we're going to end up turning to European countries, and use our preferential policies to attract more Chinese graduates from European countries back to China? Henry?
You know, China suffer heavily on the brain drain, actually. So compare with U.S., you know, I think China what it does is really learning from U.S. a little bit of that. So I think now U.S. if the FBI director said, oh, every Chinese student is a spy potentially, that's really is not sending a welcome message. So I'm glad that President Trump actually said at the G20 to President Xi that he welcomes Chinese students. Chinese students, you know, there's about 300, and according to the U.S. Open Door statistics, there's about 370,000 Chinese college students in the United States enrolling right now. So if you count in there's another, you know, 100,000 high school students. If you count any other non-degree student visiting scholars, there's about 500,000 probably in the United States, generating about 20 billion revenue to the U.S. universities. It's a large, you know, contributing on the service trade. So I think this is really to the U.S. benefit. So if U.S. is not wanting that, I mean, of course, Chinese students can go to UK, can go to Australia, Canada, and France, and many other countries, Japan. So I think now China is having the largest accounts about 1/3 of global international students. It's a great messenger and ambassador, and also a culture, cross-culture bridges on the China, and bring China to the outside world, and bring outside world to China. So I think this is really you know, a great forces that helping facilitate the brain circulation. I think that's why China can keep its innovation still at a compatible speed, because they have this talent flow circulation. Now China is adding on top of that. So let's welcome foreign students, non-Chinese talent. I think this is great. This is going to elevate China's innovation and also China's development in the long run. So I think this with AI, artificial intelligence, and the data, and high-tech internet, so those talent will really make China, you know, with 5G, China will probably position them very well with continue this international student talent circulation. I think that's very important.
Thank you very much. We are very happy to be joined here in the studio by Professor Mark Levine from Minzu University and Ravish Bhatia from India, Henry Wang Huyao standing by in Singapore, and Martin Locad standing by in Hong Kong. We're discussing impact of the recent release of preferential policies encouraging more immigration, particularly skilled labor force coming to China to serve our country in the process of economic development. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are joined here by Mark, Martin, Ravish, and Henry. Welcome back, gentlemen. We've had enough debates about why Indians got employed in technology companies of the Silicon Valley, and they have more opportunities than ethnic Chinese there. Tell me why.
I think in general, not sure how that played out over the years, but in general, language is a big barrier. A lot of the education in India happens in English for a majority of the population, then migrates to pursue higher studies in the US. So language, I think, is a big barrier, which kind of gives India the slight advantage in terms of getting these H-1B jobs in the US.
If you look at recent online debates, netizens in their millions complain bitterly about why so many scholarships have been granted to overseas students. What do you think of the reasons behind such debates in my country?
Okay, I think that on the one hand, many Chinese universities, the cost of attending for a Chinese student is quite low. At my own university, it's less than $1,000 a year, including the dormitory. And there are numerous scholarships that are available. I know many of my students have them. And part of what needs to occur is, we had talked earlier about soft power. And I think what I was explaining was people coming to China taking China's story out again. And I think that's part of what the government is attempting to do, not just provide opportunities for education, potentially contribute to China, but also to give voice to the real story of China. Why do people complain about it? Because I think many people don't understand the importance of it. And I think that's an educational problem.
Ravish?
Would I say that a lot of scholarships are being given out? Yes, we see them. But I can only speak about, say, my program and my experience. 30% of our program in our cohort, which is being now labeled as the Rhodes Scholarship of China as per Wikipedia's page, 30% of these students are Chinese. So the Chinese students are also getting these same scholarships. And what it's doing is, as part of the whole globalization process, creating an international network then expands and then adds value, net positive value to the economy in many more ways. So now these same people, I just came from 2 meetings in Zhongwon-sun, met 2 of my colleagues who are now working at these big internet companies, helping expand globally. So it's adding net value to the economy, and then these firms are then again going out and giving out those scholarships. So if you look at the net results of it, in terms of just economic value, there's a value addition that's happening, which is why perhaps I would assume the Chinese government is going out. In terms of training soft power and diplomacy, I've seen this happen in many ways. India also trains a lot of students from Africa. If you look at half of the world leaders across the world, they've been of the Oxbridge brand. India's first prime minister came from Oxbridge. And the amount of those elite connections, and sometimes in terms of just those diplomatic trainings, go a huge way.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Let me go back to Harry Wang. We're talking about the people-to-people exchanges, such as the student exchange programs. I'd like to have your thoughts, Harry.
Yeah, I think this is a topic that I agree with the previous speaker. Needs to be more orientation, probably better education on this topic, and also this could be corrected with some government initiative, as also because the system has created some understanding of that. For example, first, you know, the scholar student, depends on what number you look at. You know, there's only 40,000 students in China get scholarships, but if you count in the 400,000, it's about 10%. So 90% of students come to China still on the self-finance, so which is fine. I think that we should really encourage more universities to attract foreign students, rather than rely on the government scholarship, because there's 3,000 universities in China, only 1,000 universities is allowed to take foreign students. So all the other universities are not interested in recruit international students, because there's no policy, there's no autonomy giving them to do that. So the government has a lot of things to change on that, to give all the university autonomy to recruit international students, and also set the price by themselves. Even now, the international student with this 1,000 university that has right to recruit, they don't have the right to set the price for that. So they only rely on a scholarship, and that's why they get so much public criticism on that, because they don't have the initiative or drive to probably get more students from other sources, so that they can make study in China a very good business. The other reason is that I think we don't have enough English teachers. An English program, all the programs conducted in China are in Chinese. 99% of that, maybe undergraduates, no English curricula. So for a foreign student come to China and knows nothing about Chinese, I mean, it's difficult for them to get enrolled in the Chinese university program. That's why China has the lower standards to do that. So if we have an English program offered, like Chinese student goes to France, Germany, Italy, Japan, they all use English to study now. So why can't we use more English program, hire more international faculties? Like I'm in Singapore, both universities. Yeah.
Harry, it seems many from both developed and developing countries are abusing their tourist visa for teaching English here in the Chinese job market. Do you think in the near future we're going to have to do more to strengthen the regulations so that we would minimize the negative impact of those who have abused our laws and their visas in the Chinese job market? Harry?
No, I think I see that question too, but I see a little differently because China, you know, we are, as we have said, you know, there was very few categories of visas available for foreigners to apply. We haven't really, for example, opened the seasonal working visa. We have no student internship visa. It's only recently, I mean, this newly developed trend that had that. So if people don't have that, then they have to use tourist visa. We have not enough legitimate routes for them to apply regular visas. And that's, I think, another problem China has is that we should really broaden the category of visa, issue more types of visas so that people have all, you know, all kinds of visas, so that they can come legally rather than illegally. Because China, after all, is a very attractive market. I think finally I want to say that is because I think the management of the student we should change now. We should not put all the foreign students into one building, call them a global village or global town, but rather, you know, we should separate them. We should combine them. We should really abolish this separation system of foreign students and really integrate them with the Chinese students, so that they don't need a part companion. They have a roommate of Chinese. They have a schoolmates of Chinese. They take the same courses. They go to the same dining room. They go to the same class. So that we should abolish this, you know, I'm not saying apartheid, but maybe a different two categories of a student-managed system, which is out of the very old plan economy. I think that is really key to avoid this kind of thing happening again in the future.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us and your insightful views on this interesting issue about immigration policies that have been recently relaxed by the Chinese authorities. I hope to see you soon in the next dialogue discussion. Until then, goodbye.